Germany. Namaste. Croatia.
Whining, Chinese.
Hello, howdy, and good to see.
Dober Den, Bulgarian.
Jean-Claude, Kiswahili.
Shalom. No explanation.
Assalamu alaikum, Arabic. Hey, British. Bonjour, French.
Benvenute, Italian. Welcome. My name is Lynn Kratz-Bryan, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to host Tellabration 98. This is a worldwide story event, and we, all that are present here tonight, are part of that. It's an event that started hours ago across the ocean, and it will continue across our nation into the night, well until over 12,000 listeners have heard the power of story. Stories have been told from the beginning of time, and they were used to teach, to soothe, to heal, to continue the history of a people, of a community. We, the tellers, and you, the listeners, come together to make sure that story lives. You, the listeners, have a simple but important job. You listen with your ears, your eyes, your brain, but more importantly, your heart. The tellers you see before you tonight are all performing members of Spin-a-Storytellers, Western New York's premier storytelling guild. They've donated their time and talent to make Tellabration 98 a success. Spin-a-Storytellers is a unique group of people who keep this art form alive. And it's made up of 20 performing tellers. Performing members are people who go out into the community, whether it's a school, a church, a senior citizen group, or a family gathering. But they, as well as non-performing members, support the art and study the art. Like the spokes in a spinning wheel, which is our emblem, we play an important part, and together we represent Spin-a-Storytellers. Many thanks to all of you. Spin-a-Storytellers meets on the second Friday of every month at Central Presbyterian. There's a little brochure that tells all about us inside your program tonight. Our next gathering is Friday, December 11th, and it's an evening of our favorite holiday tales. So if you're looking for a way to add storytelling to perhaps a classroom, incorporating it into your library or church group, any kind of event, or you want to learn about the art of storytelling, but most importantly, as a listener, please join us and refer to your brochure any one of us if you have any questions. At intermission, we'll have a drawing where you can win a storytelling performance by one of the 4 tellers that you'll hear tonight. So make sure that on the back of the ticket, you have filled that out and it's dropped in the box, as well as some kazoos. We're going to ask Mark Kenmore to come up to make his presentation. We've been asked by the National Storytelling Association to read this proclamation, and Mark is a distinguished member of Spin-a-Storytellers, as well as the husband of one of our performing members, Sue Tannehill. But most importantly, he's the recent father of Nellie, who's with us here tonight.
Nellie is 3 weeks old. Proclamation. In the name of storytelling everywhere, this night, Saturday, November 21st, 1998, hereby is proclaimed to be Tellabration, the night of storytelling. On this evening, across 6 continents, in 41 states and 9 countries, from Austria to Australia, Calgary to California, Glasgow to Gladstone, Alabama to Amherst, New York, 275 audiences are gathered for storytelling. Therefore, in joy and anticipation, let the stories begin.
Our first teller tonight is Karima Amin. Karima is one of the original founders of Spin-a-Storytellers. She also collaborates with another storyteller, Sharon Holly, as We All Storytellers. You can hear her on the radio if you're up at 8:15. She's featured there on WBLK 93.7 FM. Recently, she's published a book called The Adventures of Brer Rabbit and Friends, due out next year. But tonight, you'll hear my favorite storyteller say, The Glass Cupboard, a British folktale.
Thank you. Long ago, and far away, once upon a time, there was a glass cupboard. A beautiful glass cupboard. An exquisitely beautiful glass cupboard. You could see right into it. You could see right through it. It appeared to be empty, but it wasn't. Why, if you wanted or needed anything at all, you'd find it in the glass cupboard. You could reach in for a cool drink of water. You could reach in for a new pair of shoes. Even if you wanted a bag of gold, the glass cupboard would provide. Now, you're probably thinking that something so valuable must have belonged to someone rich and powerful. And if you're thinking that, then you're right. This wonderful glass cupboard belonged to a king. And he was very, very proud of his possession, and he took great delight in watching his subjects take whatever they wanted and whatever they needed from that glass cupboard. He would always remind them, however, that if you take something out, you must always remember to put something else back in. Well, time passed, and eventually this king had to go away on a long journey. And while he was gone, someone broke into the palace and stole the glass cupboard. 3 robbers. Those 3 robbers took that glass cupboard into the forest far away. And for a long time, they simply sat and looked at this marvel. It was absolutely beautiful. But after a time, the first robber said, I want 1 bag of gold. He reached inside, and he had it. 1 bag of gold. The second robber said, I want 2 bags of gold. And reaching inside, he got 2 bags of gold. The chief of the robbers said, I want 3 of the biggest bags of gold that anyone has ever seen. Reaching inside, with some difficulty, he dragged out 3 humongous bags of gold. Hooray, they all shouted, we can have whatever we want. And then it happened. The 3 of them jumped on that glass cupboard and took out bag after bag after bag after bag of gold. All day and all night, more and more gold. The next day and the next night, bags and bags of gold. And by the third day, the chief of the robbers shouted, "Stop!" They all stopped. He said, "Wait a minute. We need to rest. We need to take a break. Let's rest all day, and tonight we can take out as much gold as we want." His partners agreed, and so they lay down to rest. They lay down to rest, but they didn't rest well. They were rather restless. They couldn't sleep. You know, they were thinking about the gold. The first robber said, "You know, if I get up and take maybe just one more bag of gold, then I can be richer than my companions." And so he got up, and he got that bag of gold, and he lay down. The second robber was thinking too, "I'm stupid for lying here when I could become richer and richer and richer. If I could just get 2 or 3 more bags, that would be okay." Yeah. So he got up. Took not 2, not 3, but 4 bags. And the chief of the robbers was thinking too, if I could get maybe a dozen or so more bags of gold, then I could be the richest man in the world. He got up. He began dragging out bag after bag after bag of gold. And as luck would have it, he stumbled back to his sleeping place and upset the others. He alerted them to what he'd been doing, and they jumped up and joined him. And once again, the 3 of them got it on with the glass cupboard, pulling out bag after bag after bag after bag after bag after bag of gold, all day and all night, all the next day and night, all that week and the next week, all that month and the next month, all during the winter. More and more and more bags of gold. They didn't stop to eat. They didn't stop to drink. They did not stop to rest. Until finally, the chief of the robbers could stand it no longer. "Stop!" he said. And picking up a huge stick, he smashed the glass cupboard into a million pieces. And giving a mighty sigh, the 3 robbers fell down dead in a heap on top of that mountain of gold. Sometime later, the king came back from his journey, and he was both angry and disappointed to find out about the glass cupboard. He told his servants to go and look for it. And they did. And they found that gold and found those dead robbers, and they got 60 carts and filled those 60 carts with bags and bags of gold. And in a special bag, they picked up a million pieces of glass, placed those pieces inside, and they brought those things to the king. He was very angry and very disappointed, and he shook his head and said, "You know, if those robbers had remembered or had known that if you take something out, you must always put something back in, they'd be alive today." And then he asked his master craftspeople to take the glass and to melt it down and to create from that a huge globe with all the countries of the world on it. And he said, "Every time someone looks at this glass globe, this glass world, I want them to remember that our world is as fragile as glass. And if we are to survive, if this world is to survive, then if we are blessed to receive anything in life, we must always remember to give something back." Storytellers are blessed to receive so much. The Tellabration is one way that we have of giving back. Thank you.
That's the power of story. And I use the word story as a noun. That is an old British folktale, but it's as real for us today in our world as it was then. Our next teller is Chris Freitag. Chris writes his own stories, but the thing I must say about Chris is he is a true gentleman. I mean, he would lay his jacket down for anyone to step over a puddle. He has been such a wonderful addition to Spin. And it's only fitting that tonight he should be telling a story about a saint. The legend of Saint Ganesha. It's a tale adapted from Heather Forrest. My favorite teller, Chris Ryder.
I had the distinct pleasure many months ago of performing a telling event with my one-time mentor, now friend. The mentor, just prior to having me go up for my very first time as a professional teller and tell, turned to me and said, "Break a leg." She had said this very same message many times in the past when I was performing as just a member of Spin, but eventually got me very curious why every time I would get up to perform, she would ask me to break a leg. Thinking that this would be quite a painful event and something that I wouldn't want to wish on anybody, I asked her one time, and she told me. You see, she explained it to me rather simply by giving me the story that I wish to tell to you here tonight. A long time ago, in Rome, there was an emperor. And this emperor, there was very little that could satisfy him. For when he sat on this throne on this particular day, with dancers abounding in scantily-clad clothes, whirling and dancing about him, trying to tempt them with as much of their art and as much of their form as they possibly could, he sat there yawning, bored. A few minutes later, when the musicians came out to perform, beautiful music, renditions never before heard in the world. Again, the Roman emperor could not be moved at all. Nothing could seem to bring him out of the slump that he was in. And still even further, when wonderful and delectable foods were brought out for him to tempt his appetite, he passed it all aside. He wanted nothing. Until the actors arrived. When the actors stepped forward into the great hall, the emperor sat bolt upright in his chair and called forth, "Is Ganesha amongst you?" At which point, a garrulous man bounded forward and says, "I'm here, my emperor. What can I perform for you this day?" At which point the emperor said, "I want you to do a parody for me. I want you to parody the Christians. I want you to show me what's going out beyond these four walls." Ganesha, being quite a talented individual, took upon this very quickly, knew right away that he could parody the events of the day with no difficulty. You see, he had anticipated this calling and had prepared many things beforehand. And standing before the king, with a staff raised in one hand, he threw it down to the ground, only to have the staff quickly removed and several snakes placed in the place where that staff used to lay. And reaching down to retrieve it, acting as if he had gotten bitten many times. Several minutes later, during the course of his play, he raised his hands up into the air and was immediately doused by several crickets. Well, this was the play that Ganesha put on for the emperor. A large tub of water was eventually brought out as the final act to this play, at which point one of the actors grabbed Ganesha by the head and upending him into the barrel, soaking him quite thoroughly and bringing him very close to being drowned. When he was finally uprighted, he stood there with a wide-eyed expression on his face. There was not a sound in the entire auditorium, except for the sound of crickets chirping off to one side. The emperor sat up in his chair and began clapping uproariously, calling for everybody to begin the play again, at which point, dead silence. Ganesha did not even move. Again, the emperor called, "We will have this play again. It will be done again for my amusement." Ganesha, stepping aside from the basin of water, said, "I cannot perform this play again. I cannot perform a rite any longer, which I now know is sacred. For when I was dunked in this water, at that point, I was baptized. It would be wrong for me to go against that which I know is true." At which point the emperor stood up from his chair and said, "You will perform this play. You shall not defy the emperor." Ganesha says, "I will not." The emperor, more red in the face and angrier than he had ever been before, ordered his guards to take Ganesha away and break both of his legs, turning him from the front gates without a penny and barely the clothes upon his back. At this time, these later years, we remember Ganesha in our Christian lore, for he's remembered as Saint Ganesha. And when somebody asks you, as an actor, as a teller, as a performer of any form, to go up on stage and to break a leg, they're telling you at that moment to be true to yourself, to be true to that which you know to be correct in your heart. So I ask each one of our tellers who are here tonight, and those who have gone before me this evening, to break a leg.
I was just living like I broke my leg. Our next teller is Anne-Marie Jason. Anne-Marie is a full-time librarian. She has the most delightful sense of humor. She always manages to tap into that child inside each of us. And tonight she's going to tell us The Princess Who Stood on Her Own 2 Feet by Jean Vinci. My favorite teller, Anne-Marie Jason.
I'm afraid I'm going to have someone else tell the story for me, if you'll hold on just a moment. I'm an enchanted dog. It's true. The wizard has this thing for mail order, and he got a 2-for-1 deal, and I was half of it. Well, you see, I'm not the only one who's enchanted. Actually, I think I could be enchanted because one day I saw her. I was enchanted. She was the princess. The princess as tall and bright as a sunflower. The princess of my dreams who could do anything. What the tutors taught her, she learned like a snap. She could play the harp. She could play the zither. She wove tapestries. She trained animals. She had quite a way with animals, I might say. Why, she could enchant the wizard himself. But there was one thing missing. For the princess who had everything did not have love. There was no suitor suitable for her in all of the kingdom. And each day she grew more bored and more restless and more sad until at last the wizard was called to her side. And who should be trailing along around about his ankles but moi. Yes, me. The one with the golden, silky hair. The one with the aristocratic demeanor. The one who had the best of what could be called the Afghan hound way. She took to me right away, because of course in the kingdom no one had ever seen a dog before. And from that day on we were like this. We were the best of companions. But still, a dog is a dog, and not a prince. And she'd stare out her window and hope that someday some handsome knight would come up on his horse and just whisk her away. I'm waiting for the one I love. It was not to be for a long time, until one day, one summer day, word came from a nearby kingdom that an alliance could be made. Yes, her chances were running high now. And the next day, the prince was to arrive. There was to be a big feast. She was all a tither, getting ready for the feast. Oh, she stared out that window again, imagining the best of imaginings. Once in a while, she'd pat me on the head, for which I was grateful. She thought, maybe it's him. Let it please be him. It must be him. Oh, dear God, can I die? And indeed, the prince made his grand entrance into the feast. dark and handsomely, he walked to her side. Oh, she melted there in her seat. I was disgusted. I was off my kibble for at least a week. But they did get along well. We saw them holding hands under the table. The king and queen were thrilled. The two kingdoms could soon merge for the best of all best economic worlds. But when the prince stood up, a cloud darkened the prince's face, for he found something wrong with her. And he fled from the feast without a word. And the princess just stood there awestruck. Later that night, I tried to comfort her as best I could, but she said, What's wrong? I don't understand what's wrong with me. There's nothing wrong, I said. It's your height. My height? She said. She didn't even notice that I had spoken. What's wrong with my height? I'm a princess. We're all tall in my family. And indeed they were. But she didn't know something about the outside world, you see. I had to break it to her. You see, dear princess, men want their wives to be shorter than they are. That's the way it is. But why? She asked. This was a tough one to explain, but I tried to put it the best I could. Well, you see, if they're not taller, then they can't, well, they think they can't, they think they really can't train falcons as well. Yeah, that's it. They can't train falcons as well, or something like that. Oh, I see, she said. Well, she was inconsolable. The king and queen said, let's get the wizard on this. And the wizard said, well, why don't we call out to the next kingdom? Because I can see that all of my spells, all of my enchantments are not going to work on her. She said, oh, please, please make me shorter. Please, please. Well, he could do fat. He could do thin. But he could not do short. Maybe a raven? No, she said. Short. No luck. Well, they sent out to the next kingdom. A special deal was made. The queen went to the prince and begged him, told him all about chivalry, all about duty, and then the king reminded him of some ghastly gambling debts. And he came. The next day, her prince had come for the second time. And this time, she was abed. And he thought her quite lovely that way. He did like her when she was sitting or laying down. And they did have the most romantic little talk. I thought I was going to arf. Well, soon, you see, he said, listen, I could give you a nice little ride on the horse, and we'll go out riding together. And the princess thought, I won't look as tall that way. So they went out for a ride, and the prince, trying to show her how high a hurdle he could jump over, went leaping off ahead of her. Well, the princess came right along behind him, and she leaped the hurdle too. He said, and thought again about leaving her. He said, haven't you ever heard that ladies are supposed to ride side saddle? Oh, she thought, gee, it's really not as much fun that way, is it? And you wouldn't have as much control. Oh, well, I'm sorry, she said so prettily that he forgave her. But she noticed a cloud again coming over his face when she stood up. Again, the height stood in his way, and she had to think fast. She had to save the situation. She knew what she had to do for love. She fell down on the ground and said, "Oh, my leg! I can't stand!" Well, blushing with vigor and strength, the prince lifted her up and carried her back to the castle. There he stayed for many days. I stood by her all the time. Each day, he came and told her how lovely she was. And each day, she said, "Oh dear, please take me to my window so that I can listen to you tell me all about your lovely chivalric episodes." She was happy to do this, and she confided to me that it was worth the loss of her legs just to be with such a man. But then she got bored, and she started to think of clever things to please her prince. And this kind of backfired on her, because one day he said, "Hasn't anyone ever told you that women should be seen and not heard?" Now, the little thing that she had said beforehand I thought was actually quite funny, but apparently he hadn't a sense of humor, and the princess cried. She cried so hard that it left her speechless, or else she decided not to speak. Well, there was quite a flush and flurry all around as they all tried to put their ointments on her and all the spells, all the enchantments, and nothing seemed to work. She still didn't speak. And she tried to communicate the best she could using a slate. But you see, the prince wasn't much of a reader. And, well, she decided that maybe it would be better just to communicate with a flutter in the eyelashes, with a smile that seemed to make him quite happy. It put her in mind of how much better she did when she just laid down or sat, and maybe it's better if she just listened, and then he wouldn't have to listen and be so remote. Well, the prince was still not happy, because there I was, curled up at the end of her bed. And he said, "Why don't you get rid of this thing?" And he made as if to swipe me off of the bed. Well, the princess stayed his moves. "Oh, no, she thought to herself. I know she thought that. She would have certainly written it on her. She would have written it down. She was blinking. I knew she was thinking that. She would protect me." Well, that night, when no one was around and she knew no one could hear her speak, she said to me, "You're the only one who cares. I'm so glad you're here. I don't know what to do." Well, I called the whiz. The whiz would have to know what to do. And the wizard came, and he tried everything again. Finally he said, "I must tell you that everything comes in threes. First, you lost your walking. Then you lost your talking. And now I fear you're going to have to lose something else." Not me, I thought. Not me. And the princess thought, not him. I know she would have thought it. Well, the prince said, "This dog must go. Do you love me, or do you love the dog?" "Oh, what am I to do?" she thought. I know she thought it. Well, after he was gone, she said, I can't marry him and take you, but I can't leave you either. Oh, I'll have to think of something." And just then she heard the prince coming, and she hid me under the bed. He said, "I see that cur isn't here. The air feels better already. I can feel my allergies coming on with that one. My head feels nice and clear now. Yes, it does. Yes, feels good." But he could not tell her. that he loved her the best, and that he had always loved her before she didn't walk, and before she didn't talk. And the princess thought long and hard all night about it. And she said, I still don't know what to do. I said, I can't leave you in so much pain. I can see how hard it is for you. And now I know that I must do something for love. I know that love must mean sacrifice. And just as I said that, why, everything went black and...
Just a moment, I'll have to take over. Listen here, I'm the wizard's cat. And I'm at the point now where I've seen all this stuff going on. I've seen all these things going on. I was in the closet at the time. I saw it happening, and the princess went over to that poor cur, the poor guy. She went over to him, and there she was, a bucket of tears hovering over his lifeless form. She took his body. She wrapped it in her wedding dress, a lovely white velvet. I've placed many a hairball on it through the day. And she carried him all the way to the cemetery. Everyone saw her going. Everyone saw her. They were amazed that she was walking. And she saw the prince. He nearly fell off his horse when he saw her. He said, where are you going? What are you doing? What are you doing with that wedding dress? And then he saw the dog. He said, that thing, you were supposed to have gotten rid of him a long time ago. And she said, well, he was the one who was true to me. He was the one who really loved me after all. He said, hey, you're talking, aren't you? He was slow on realizations. And she said, yes, I am. And the words I have to say to you are goodbye, and then goodbye again. And she left, and she buried the dog as well. He should have been buried with honor. And when she came back, she couldn't sleep for the lack of him. He was her true friend. And so she got up again in the middle of the night. And as she was standing in the graveyard, she heard the jingling of a bridle. And as she looked up, sure enough, there over the horizon was a prince, shining golden in the light. Ah, she walked up to him and she said, and who may you be? He said, I don't know. I don't know where I've been or what. I've been in this long, dark place, and now here I am with you. And he got down from his horse, and she put forth a little prayer, but her prayer was not answered. Yes, he was shorter than she was. But as he bent down, he said, oh, I'm glad to look up to a beautiful, wonderful woman like you. Let me kiss your hand. And indeed, she let him kiss her hand. Well, I confess I started to purr. It was just too much. It was just too romantic. And just then, the whiz came out, and he said, I've been watching the whole thing. Now, let's just make sure that they go off together into the sunset. Is there a sunset yet? I don't care, I said. Doesn't matter. They're going to go off. And so they did. And the wizard said, you know, these enchantments are starting to mystify even me. I'll have to remember, though, the next time, that maybe, in order to have real love, you have to have sacrifice. Oh, on the contrary, I said, maybe to have real love, you shouldn't have to sacrifice. Good idea, said the whiz. And we went home, and the whiz gave me an extra bowl of cream.
Our next teller is Diane Evans. Diane holds a special place in my heart because when I first wanted to become a storyteller, she was my teacher and then became my mentor. She's also a full-time science teacher, an avid canoeist, and a lover of outdoors. Tonight she's going to be telling Slower Than the Rest. It's a story by Cynthia Ryland. My favorite teller, Diane Evans.
This is a Cynthia Ryland story, and it comes from a collection of hers called Every Living Thing. Leo was the first one to spot the turtle, so Leo was the one who got to keep it. The whole family was in the car, driving up Tyler Mountain from church, when Leo shouted, "There's a turtle!" And everyone's head jerked to the stop of the car. Now, Leo's father grumbled something about making turtle soup. And Leo's little sisters in the back seat said, "Ooh, yuck, a turtle." But Leo's mother liked turtles, and so she allowed Leo to get out of the car, pick up the turtle, and bring it home. As soon as Leo picked up the turtle, he named it Charlie. When he got home, he found a cardboard box just the right size for the turtle. He put in some radishes and some lettuce and a little bowl of water, and he declared himself a happy boy. He loved this turtle. He talked to it, he hugged it, he carried it around with him. He liked to carry it up here on his left shoulder the way some people might carry a cat. And every once in a while the turtle would poke his head into Leo's left ear, and that would make Leo giggle. Now, Leo found Charlie the summer he was in between the 4th and 5th grades. Leo was, he was a quiet boy. He hadn't many friends. He lived out in the country, and he was slower than the rest. Well, that's the way his father said it. Slower than the rest. Leo was slow at reading. He was slow at math. He was slow at just about everything that passed before him in a classroom. As a result, at the end of the 4th grade, he'd been taken out of his class and put into a room with children who were as slow as he. He didn't see how he'd ever be happy again after that. Well, that summer, Charlie took care of Leo's happiness. He was just about the friendliest turtle that anyone had ever seen. He was always going around, stretching his neck out and looking to the left and the right to see what was in the world. If you picked him up, his front legs and back legs would swim frantically as if he were in a sea trying to escape an awful enemy. And when you set him back down, he'd sniff the air for a moment, and then he'd take off, as if no one ever told him how slow turtles were supposed to be. Well, fall came along and Leo entered the 5th grade. And each day that he came home, he ran upstairs and got Charlie out of the box and brought him out to the backyard and let him explore. And he told him everything that happened in the 5th grade that day. Leo didn't know how old a turtle Charlie was, but he saw these funny wrinkles on his forehead and lines by his eyes, and that made him think that he was wise, the way old people are wise. And so he confided in him every day. Well, there came a day when Leo decided to take Charlie to school. It was Prevent Forest Fires Week, and everyone was watching nature films and making posters and pretending they were Smokey the Bear. Leo's teacher asked everyone to come in on Friday and give a report about forests. That's the day that Leo took Charlie to school. Now, he didn't want anyone to know he had a turtle, so he found a lid that fit over the cardboard box, and he held it tightly on his lap as he rode on the bus. He was awfully glad that turtles didn't make much noise, except for an occasional hiss. But Charlie was a turtle who liked to sleep in, so he didn't do any hissing in the morning. When they got to school, Leo carried the box into the classroom and he set it on the windowsill next to the geraniums. And the teacher called attendance and the day began. Well, about halfway through the morning, it was time for the forest reports. The first girl got up and she held a big piece of poster board with lots of pictures of animals on it. And she explained that if there was a forest fire, all the animals would die. The pictures were so small that the children could barely see them from their seats. Leo got really bored. A boy got up and mumbled something about burnt up trees, but Leo wasn't listening. And then a boy got up and tried to explain if there was a forest fire, his father couldn't go hunting anymore. And Leo didn't see the connection in that at all. Well, finally it was Leo's turn. He went and got the cardboard box, carried it up front, and put it on the teacher's desk. He stood to the side of the desk, and he looked out over the room full of faces, including his teachers. When a person throws a match into a forest, Leo began, he's a murderer. He kills trees and birds and animals. And some of those animals are fast, they can escape. But others, he said, as he lifted the lid off the box, are too slow. They have no hope, and they will die. It isn't fair, he said, as he lifted Charlie out of the box, and everyone gasped and giggled at what they saw. It isn't fair for the slow ones. Leo said much more. He told all about turtles and how they move and what they eat and all the talents they possess. He told them about Charlie the turtle and Charlie the friend. And everything he said made everyone in that room love turtles and hate forest fires. When he was finished, he noticed his teacher had tears in her eyes. Late that afternoon, everyone gathered in the gymnasium to bring the special week to a close. The first person that got up to speak was a forest ranger dressed in his uniform, and he told about his job. Then someone got up dressed like Smokey the Bear and danced with two others dressed like squirrels. And Leo wondered if he should laugh at the dancers like everyone else, but he didn't really feel like it. Then the principal got up and began a long talk, as principals like to do. And Leo's thoughts drifted off. He imagined himself at home, drawing pictures with Charlie hobbling all about the room. And so he didn't hear when someone said his name. And he jumped when someone said, "It's you!" And he looked at the children around him, and they were pushing him to his feet, saying, "Go on, you won!" He looked over at the principal, who was smiling at him and beckoning to him. Oh, well, Leo's legs moved just like Charlie's, quickly and forward. When he got to the principal, he shook his hand, and they gave him an award. It was an award for his presentation with Charlie. It was the first award that Leo had ever won in his whole life. And as he shook hands again and said thank you, he thought his heart would explode with happiness. That night, alone in his room, well, with Charlie on his shoulder, Leo felt so proud. And for the first time in a very long time, Leo felt fast.
Our first session is coming fast to a close, and our next teller is Bob Bergash. Bob likes to tell stories from many cultures, but he likes to tell a lot of Jewish stories, which he's going to tell us tonight. It's a story called Paradise. And he's currently using storytelling in the corporate world, so I'm very anxious to speak with him about that. My favorite teller, Bob Bergash.
Yankel Rabinowitz was a simple man. He had lived his whole life as a tailor in a shtetl, that's a little village, called Sokolivka in Ukraine. He worked hard, And he was a good man, Baruch Hashem, praise to God. He had a family, he had grandchildren, and finally, Yankel decided he could retire. And he had everything planned, and he and his wife could live comfortably. Well, as comfortably as a Jew could live in the Ukraine at that time. He had enough food, and he had a good bed, and a nice house. What else? One night, Yankel went to sleep, and he had a dream. Now, in the tradition of mystical Judaism, there are two types of dreams. A regular dream, which connects to something that happens every day. But there are certain dreams that fall from the heavens themselves. Now, I have to admit, out of 1,000 people, maybe one person will have one of these dreams in a whole lifetime. But Yankel woke up with a start, knowing he had had a dream straight from heaven. And the dream said to Yankel, you must leave your home, you must leave Sokolivka, and you must go to paradise. And paradise, the dream said, was over there. Yankel woke up his wife, and he told her the story. I have to leave, I have to go to paradise. What are you, Neshigana, she said. He's crazy. No, I had the dream. Oh, go to sleep. The next morning, Yankel still was determined to go to paradise. And his wife starts wailing, you're leaving, you're going to leave me? Don't worry, he said, I'll leave all the money, I won't take anything with me, you'll be comfortable. She called the children and the grandchildren, they're wailing and crying. But Yankel had the dream. And he packed up all his clothes, well, a few shpatas, a few rags, and a few things, but because he left everything for his wife and his children and his grandchildren, because he was a good man. He decided to go to paradise, even though his whole life he had never left Sokolivka. But he knew he had to go to paradise over there. And everybody screaming and wailing, but he left down the street in that direction. Now Yankel, he knew no ways of travel. He never left his whole life. He didn't even go over to the next village. He didn't know how to read the stars, but he had a plan. He walked in that direction all day, and at night, when he went to sleep, he took off his shoes and pointed them in that direction. He went to sleep, and he would get up in the morning, and he would carefully get into those shoes without moving them. And the next day, he would continue toward paradise. Over there. Well, he did this for about a week. And about on the seventh day, he was asleep when some robbers came by. Now, they very carefully didn't want to wake Yankel up, and they searched all in front of the bedding and the whole campsite, and they couldn't find anything. And finally, one of the robbers says, check his shoes. They always hide their gold in the shoes. He picked up the shoes and checked it, and they realized they had tried to rob a poor man. But in doing so, they put the shoes down, so they pointed back there. So Yankel gets up in the morning, not knowing the robbers had touched the shoes, and he carefully gets into the shoes, and he walks that way. And for a week he walks until he comes to the outskirts of a little shtetl, a village. Said Yankel, I've arrived at paradise. And would you believe it? It looks like Sokolivka. What a great God we have. Baruch Hashem, bless the Lord. He walks into the village and he goes down the street and he can't believe it. Here he is in paradise and the streets look the same as where he came from. What a wonderful God. And then he finds a street that looks just like his. And he finds a house that looks just like his. He's just amazed. He opens the door. And can you believe it? In paradise, there is a woman living in a house that looks just like his wife. So he goes in the house. Everybody's happy. He sits down. he has a little challah bread, and from that day on, Yankel lived in that house. And he never was dissatisfied again, because he knew he was now living in paradise.
When you go out to take a little break, remember to point your shoes back in. Because there's more storytelling coming. Right now, you can make sure that you have your name on the back of the ticket for the drawing that's going to take place. We have books and tapes that are for sale. Some of the information out there is about some of the storytellers. Please, any of us would be willing, more than glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. We'll see you back in about 10 minutes. lights. Diana, could you just get everyone from outside, please? Welcome back to paradise. Before we start any of the stories, everyone has filled out the back of their ticket, and in doing so, you're now on our Tellabration mailing list, as well as have the opportunity to win one of the 4 different storytellers that we have tonight that are going to donate their time to whatever particular event you would like to have them storytell at. If for some reason their schedule doesn't meet yours, I'll let you work that out amongst them. Their name is going to be on your ticket, so they're going to take your ticket home. They can call you, and then you can work something out. We also have a couple of kazoos that have been donated tonight via Bob Burgash. And of course, since I'm the mother of 3 and the aunt of one of many, they're going to help me pick tonight. First, I must thank Lorna Zarnota for her beautiful harp playing this year. She is indeed a gifted artist, and you will hear more of her this evening, as well as able to purchase any of her tapes. First child, firstborn. Okay. Kelly Mertler and E.R. Kelly. Well, you just won Anne Marie Jason. Pam, you've just won a kazoo. And this is for Pat Feidner, who we haven't heard yet. Kathleen Sullivan. Kathleen, Pat Feidner, you will hear her. And this person wins a kazoo. Oh, John, it's not you, honey. It's Kelly, Knoer. Knoer. Oh, wonderful. Why don't you bring it down to her? This person's going to win Lorna Zarnota. And it's Liz Fritshaw. Liz, super. This person wins a kazoo. Tia Reno. Oh, all right. And this person is winning Karima Ahmed. Joni Campbell. Thank you, children. You did a wonderful job. The next teller is Mary Lee Devaney and myself. What words can I use to express this next teller, who's not only agreed to tell a story with me?
Already your favorite teller.
Mary Lee is a wonderful storyteller. She's a full-time storyteller, and she can bring any story alive with her voice and her body language. Me, I'm my kid's mom, as Dr. Laura would say. We're going to tell a story
In tandem.
that means two of us.
Two.
One.
And one.
Together.
Two.
Together.
Together. Yeah. You want to tell them the name?
The name of the story is The Story of Capriano. It's an Italian folk tale taken from the book Tales Alive.
There once was a farmer named
Capriano.
Now, Capriano worked down at the grape vineyard. He would tend the vines and pick the grapes, and he would till the soil with his trusty old mule. Now, Capriano was also a very quiet man. He didn't boast a lot. He kept to himself. And because of this, being so quiet and all, people sometimes thought he was a little, not too bright. And so people would say the most unkind things. In particular, two brothers by the name of
Luigi.
and Anthony
Nunzio. That Capriano, he's such an idiot.
He's nothing but a moron.
He ain't smart like we are.
Or good looking, He's up. Did you say idiot?
Idiot.
Well, he's a double dog idiot then.
He's a noodlehead.
He's a numbskull.
Capriano, being the quiet man that he was, trying to ignore everything they had to say. But he wasn't going to take it any longer. He wasn't going to be made a fool of. He was going to show them who the fools really were, especially those Nunzio brothers. And today was the day he was going to show that. So in the morning, he fed his trusty mule some gold coins before they went down to the vineyard. And all day long, he worked in the hot sun alongside all the other farmers. And just before they were getting ready to go home, as he stood there along the side of the road, he fed his trusty mule a nice, cool bucket of water. And that's where he stood when
The Nunzio brothers came by. Now, the mule did what mules usually do after eating and getting a good cool drink of water. It left a steaming, heaping, hefty load of manure. Well, the Nunzio brothers came by, and as they walked by, they couldn't help but notice little tiny gold sparkles, like magic manure or something. They got a closer look, and they could see there was gold coins, and they were amazed. Hey! Luigi, you see this? Look at that! Look in there! It's gold coins in there! Look at that! If we could have a donkey that would dump like that, we'd be so rich! I think Capriano knows. Let's find out. Hey! Capriano! Good to see you, pal. How you doing today? We were just wondering, does your mule always dump like this?
what? My mule will do what all the mules will do.
Doesn't know. Okay. Capriano, we was just looking at your mule, and it's looking a little long in the tooth. Kind of old, and we feel bad about that. A man like you shouldn't be working with a lousy little old mule like that. Tell you what we'll do. My brother and me will take that mule off your hands. We'll even buy it from you. Tell you what, we'll give you 400 crowns. What do you say, huh?
You want to give me a 400 gold crowns for my old mule?
Well,
Oh, I don't know. My mule, he's such a treasure to me, though. I don't know.
I'll tell you what. We'll give you 450 crowns. And just think, with that, you can buy a new mule. And he'll be strong and young, and you won't have this old lousy beat-up thing to haul around anymore.
I don't know. My mule and I, we have been working together an awful long time.
Now I just think you're being greedy. 500 crowns. 500 crowns, and this eyesore will be out of your life forever, and you'll buy a brand new mule. Just think, nice little hooves, a nice waggly tail, big ears, strong muscles. Be nice, huh?
I don't know. I'm not a very smart man, but
we'll think
500 gold crowns for my mule? Oh, okay. It's a fine by me, boys.
The deal was struck, and the Nunzio brothers were thrilled at their new acquisition. They went all the way home with that mule. They went to the barn, and there they began to plot and plan what they were going to do next.
Oh, such a mule. Oh, man. We don't got to do nothing but sleep and eat.
It's gonna be so fast. I can't believe this. What are we gonna do now? How are we gonna do this thing?
I don't know. We just gonna wait. I think I'm coming up with a plan.
Ooh, you got the second plan there. You got the plan going. Come on. Get going. Go.
That's it. Hey, you take the mule. We're gonna tie him up. Put a sheet underneath him. I don't want to get my hands messy.
Oh, we'll get one of Mama's sheets. That's right under there.
Under there. We just go to bed. Get up in the morning. It's gonna be here for us just to go. We're gonna be rich! We're gonna be rich! That night, the Nunzio brothers couldn't get to bed fast enough, and as soon as the sun rose, they ran down to that barn, waiting to count all of those gold coins, but... Enough of that to shoot. Wait a minute. It's not our fault that he's got our money. It's Capriano. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Oh, I know that look.
You're doing another plan.
Oh, you're thinking. What is it called?
The pitchfork. Get the pitchfork.
The big pitchfork?
The big pitchfork. And we're going to go see Capriano.
Oh!
We're going to go get him now. Get the pitchfork.
I got the pitchfork. Let's go get her. They went down to the vineyard, and there they found Capriano tending the vines as usual. And they laid into Capriano. Capriano! You're a lousy, no good, double-dealing, dirty-dog sheep! I can't believe you treated us this way after we bought your mule!
Boy,
It's a
slow it down. I'm not a very smart man. I can't hear all of that fast. Slow it down. And what are you were saying something that happened to that mule?
Something happened to it. We bought a perfectly fine mule that dumps, and now it's dumping different.
Wait.
Yeah, and it's just different now. And it's your
You
fault.
were saying some harm are coming to that mule?
Well, I mean, we took care of it. I mean, we fed it, and we gave it water. We gave it nice green grass, a big bucket of water.
No.
What?
That mule don't eat a regular grass. He only eats a hard grass. Now, I thought you boys could have figured that out by yourself.
Oh, you tell us. So what are you saying? We wrecked it?
Sounds impossible. I'll tell you what. I'll come it down. I'll take a look at the mule.
Yeah.
If no harm are coming to the mule, I'll take the mule back. You boys will get your money. But I gotta go tell a mama where I'm gonna be. So give me a few moments.
Yeah, go take care of Mama. Capriano went down to talk to his wife.
Mama, I want you to make a nice big pot of soup. You put it on the burner. You make it nice and hot. Then when the soup is all done, I want you to shut the burner off. Then I want you to put that nice hot pot of soup up in the cupboard. like it's been a poop in there all day long. I think maybe we're going to have a summer visitors.
Hey, Capriano! So what do you think now? What do you think of the mule? That was pretty good. You think you can take it back then? Huh? Looking... What?
No. No.
Oh.
No, boys, we make a handshake. We got a bargain. This mule ain't the same a mule, you know.
You see the record?
I see you record the mule. I keep the money, and you keep the mule. But you know, I feel sort of bad about what happened to you boys. So
You don't feel bad.
why don't you come home with me? You know, Mama, she always got a nice pot of soup waiting, and well, you know. We've been neighbors for a long time, and I don't want to have no bad feelings, so you come home with me.
Never to refuse a good hot meal. The Nunzio brothers went back to Capriano's home, and what they saw amazed them.
Capriano took that hot pot of steaming soup right down from the cupboard, like it indeed had been cooking there all day long. He set that hot pot of soup in front of those Nunzio brothers, and he ladled out the hot, rich broth. Come on, boys, I got some nice grated cheese here, I got some fresh bread, mange.
This is so unbelievable! This is so unbelievable! I can't believe this is so unbelievable! Wow. A pot like this, they just like took the pot out of the cupboard, and it's like all hot to eat.
I don't know what we would do without that pot. That pot didn't make our life so simple.
This pot never have to cook again.
You know, we just come in from the fields, that pot is a nice hot soup waiting for us.
Capriano! You know, we were looking at this pot here, and, you know, it's got a little dent in the side. I think I see a little rust down there. I couldn't imagine a fine man like you having an old, dented up, rusted pot like this. You deserve better. You know what? Me and Luigi feel so bad for you. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We'll buy this pot from you. Free and clear, we'll buy it from you. And then you can take the money and you can go buy a brand new pot. Look at your hands. Look, they're all scoured up. You're going to clean that pot out. You never have to clean it again. What? How about some 500 crowns?
Well, I'm not a very smart man, but you want to 500 gold crowns for my old black pot? Well,
no, Capriano. Okay, fine.
Somehow, it wasn't, I don't know.
All right. Mr. Greedy. 600 crowns.
Well, 600 gold crowns for this old black pot, well...
Now, wait a minute. I would like to remind you, you just sold us a mule that just dumped regular old dump. And we got stuck with it, and now we can't do what we wanted with it, and then we're stuck. You got a little more money. All you have to do is sell us the pot.
You got a point there, you know. You guys got to stuck with that mule, and I got to stuck with the 500 gold crowns. You should all be kidding that money should pass the hands again. Okay, 600 gold crowns, and the pot is yours.
The deal was struck, and the Nunzio brothers again were thrilled with their new purchase. They grabbed the pot, they went home, they opened the cupboard door, put the pot inside, locked the cupboard door, and waited with fork and spoon in hand the amount of time it takes for magic pot to cook, and then they opened the cupboard door, pulled out the pot, looked inside, and...
What?
Hey! Nothing. Hey! It's empty! Hey, I'm wasting away. Look at me. What are you complaining? What are you doing now?
Oh, you know, I'm getting upset here.
You're getting upset.
Wait a minute.
What?
Wait a minute.
Oh, you're getting
sack. I'm gonna take that pot, I'm gonna hit him over the head with it, and then we're gonna take him in that sack and tie it up real nice and tight and throw him in that pond there by the tavern.
Now you're thinking, here's the sack.
Let's go.
Let's go. They found Capriano working down in the vineyard. They wasted no time. Hit him over the head with the pot, put him in the sack, tied a good knot on top,
And strung a great big long pole through it so they could carry him down to throw him in the pond.
Now, as they were passing on their way down to the pond, they happened upon a tavern.
I'm getting hot.
Me too.
Hey, I'm getting a plan.
Another one? Are we another one?
Well, I'm planning on going over in that tavern for a drink. And I'm planning on you buying.
Hey.
So,
I like that plan.
let's put this guy down. He ain't going anywhere. Now let's go have ourselves a cold one.
So off they went to have a cold one. And while they were out having a cold one, Capriano stayed in the sack. Now a young farmer came by, and he had a cow behind him. And he was leading him along, and he couldn't help but hear something coming from the sack.
No, I don't want to go. I don't care how rich she is.
Hey, you say you don't care how rich a who is?
I don't care how rich the princess is, and I don't care how beautiful she is.
You don't care about how beautiful she is or how rich she is? What are you going to do about the princess? What are you talking about?
No, I'm just a simple farmer, and that's all I want to stay. No, I don't care how rich or how beautiful she is. I don't want to go.
You mean you're supposed to marry a beautiful princess and she's a rich and you don't want to marry her?
No, rich, beautiful, never have to do anything the rest of my life. No, that's not for me.
You're crazy! I didn't do anything to be in the books. I was not to be in the
What? Did I hear you say you would do anything to be in Amaya's shoes?
I'd do anything.
Oh, well, I'm not a very smart man, but you know, you just untie that sack. I could get out and you could get in. You know, at least you're still inside.
Capriano stepped out. The farmer stepped in. And the sack was tied up. I can't wait to marry this beautiful princess. She's gonna be rich. I'm gonna be a princess. Hey, you up there? Being I'm gonna marry a beautiful princess and she's very rich, I'm not gonna need my little cow anymore. You can have it. You take care of my cow.
Oh, I'd be glad to take you into a cow. Have a nice life. And with that, Capriano went down the road, leading his brand new cow, leaving that poor boy in the sack in the middle of the road, just when the Nunzio brothers were coming out of that tavern.
Bueno, mujer, I can make pizza pie and some more.
Oh, I thought that the little guy wasn't going to go anywhere.
Oh,
He's still here.
Let's just get rid of him. Let's let it out of the pond.
Get rid of him now.
Oh, he's heavy. Get it? Okay.
Got it.
Right?
Oh,
Two, three. Hey!
what a minute for you.
Hey, you're gonna be running fish now. You're not the fish food. Yeah, no.
That's the last we're going to see him.
Yeah. Let's go home, huh?
Okay.
All right. Now, they were pretty surprised that as they were coming down the road, they saw Capriano, broad as milk, with a new cow. Hey, Capriano, is that you? What's it so dry? Nice bovine. Where did you get the cow?
Well, I got that cow from the land of plenty.
Land of plenty. I've heard of that place. We know that place. We heard of it.
you boys are to be thanking for that, because that land of aplenty is all the way at the bottom of the pond.
The bottom of the pond?
Oh, you gotta go all the way to the bottom of the pond.
Bottom of the pond?
Oh, yeah. But you know, I only take a one a cow. There's a plenty more there, and they're free.
You mean there's more cows there and they're free?
Absolutely
Free?
free. Free. Oh, yeah. I'm just a simple farmer, and I'm not a very smart man, but I couldn't think of how to get any more cows out, so I only take just a one.
Do you know, if we had to get our hands on those cows and get them up here, we'd be rich forever. This is so great. Gabrielle, it was really good seeing you today. Really like your cow. I bet you're a very busy person though. Come on, have a good day, have a good day. Thanks a lot for all the information. Bye, have a good day. Take your day, come now. No! We're gonna get the cows! We're gonna get those cows! They wasted no time. The Nunzio brothers went right to the pond and dove in head first.
Well, nobody really knows what would ever happen to those boys. But
They were never seen in those parts
again. Somebody came up to me at the break and said, "You're my favorite MC." The next teller is Pat Feidner. You know, I used to think that Pat came from this really, really large family because she just kept talking about all these family stories. And I said, wow, every story she told had all these family characters in it. Until I took a workshop from her and I found out that that's how you incorporate all your family members into your stories. No matter what story Pat tells, though, she'll leave you laughing or she'll leave you crying. And sometimes she leaves you with both. And tonight she's going to be telling Swans and Goose. It's a story, it's based on a story from Charlotte Edwards. My favorite teller, Pat Feidner.
Glad I don't do a Italian. The eastern coast of the state of Maryland is riddled with streams and rivers like the fingers on hands. These streams go inland and end in little pools and lakes like the palms of those hands. This is where the winter birds winter. The northern water birds come there by the thousands in early fall. The prolific geese, the majestic swans, the little ducks that float just 2 or 3 inches above the water. The waterways are alive with birds. And shortly after they all arrive and get settled, it's hunting season. And the waterways are even more alive. Because now, along with birds, they have blinds and hunters and decoys. And the air is full of raucous noise. Shotguns, geese, ducks. But the swans, protected by law, are oblivious to the chaos around them as they swim up and down the banks, feeding at their own time, acting like they're almost disdainful of the other birds. Later in the season, occasionally, a storm will blow through. And if the tide is right and the streams are low, they will freeze. And the landscape looks very different with ice and snow. A friend of mine who has a house on one of these little streams woke up one morning to find such a storm had gone through. And she took her first cup of coffee to the picture window to look out over the water to see the difference that the storm had made. And as she stood there, something didn't look right. So she reached for the binoculars that she kept there by the window and looked again. Yes, there was a goose on the water, which was now ice. A single goose, frozen into the ice. She couldn't even tell if it was still alive. And she didn't know what to do. For she knew from experience that that ice was not thick enough to support her. And as she stood there watching, she saw in the murky sky a line of swans going somewhere. And they got over the goose, and the line became a circle, which came down, and finally the swans landed, softly as a feather hits the ground, on the ice around that goose. She was horrified. She knew about the cruelty of wildlife. Were those swans going to peck that goose to death in front of her? And there was nothing she could do. And as she watched, yes, those long white necks came up, and those razor-sharp bills went down, but not on the goose. Like a crew of men with pickaxes, they attacked the ice around the goose. And they worked and worked. She didn't know how long. She couldn't not watch. Until finally, that goose was able to lift a foot, and then the other foot. And as silently as they had come, the swan circle formed and rose and hovered over the goose. The goose moved a bit, but just his feet. And then as if he had hollered, "Hey, I still can't fly, guys!" 4 of the swans came back. And with those razor-sharp bills, they preened that goose. They scraped the ice off his body, off his wings, under his wings, from his throat. And each time they touched his wings, he tried to open them again. And when at last those wings were out at full length, the swans flew back up to join the circle, which straightened out, and they went on their way. And the goose stood there a minute, and he flapped his wings, and he took off. Double time to catch up with the swans. And there he was, like a small dirty boy at the end of a crack of a whip of older boys, as they flew who knows where, but out of sight. It was only then that my friend realized there were tears on her face, and that most of the day had gone. This is a true story. It's a story that I remember when the world looks really, really bad. And my question is, if it works for the birds, why not for me?
storyteller is Sharon Holly. Sharon is a librarian. She actually manages the children's department at the downtown library. And recently, her African American history rap was published in Talk That Talk, an anthology of Black storytelling, as well as the African American Book of Values. She loves to regale us with stories of her own childhood, and tonight she's going to tell us her original tale called House Paint. My favorite teller, Sharon Holly.
Before I begin the story, I guess I have to tell you a little bit about where I'm from. I'm a Florida girl, and the story takes place in Florida. Now, I was speaking to someone on the break, and my home is High Springs, Florida, near Gainesville, up in the north central part of the state. So just imagine that you're in a small southern town where this takes place. The house was always white. It was always white because my dad painted it white every August when he got his vacation from the railroad. Now the trim on the house would change. Sometimes the trim was red, sometimes it was brown, it's been green, but the house is always white. One year the trim was yellow, but I think that was the year that it must have been a sale on yellow trim paint. Because I was somewhere and a friend of mine came up and they said, "Oh, your house looks so nice." And I'm thinking they're talking about azaleas blooming, or my mom had flowers all over, or the bridal rose in the front. But when I got home, I knew what they were talking about. Because with all the leftover yellow paint from the trim, we had yellow flower pots, yellow swings, yellow chairs in the yard, and inside the house, the wooden kitchen table was yellow. And no paint went to waste that year. Well, the house had been freshly painted. And I was sitting around with my friends one hot summer day in Florida. You can imagine that. About 95 degrees, and we didn't know what to do. Generally, we play baseball. Our trash can is first base, Miss Davis' trash can is third base, and we put a rock out in the middle for second. But somebody slid into Miss Davis' trash can's third base, so baseball was over. Couldn't play no more because we didn't have a third base. So we were sitting around wondering what to do. And my dad had an old shed where he kept a lot of old, just junk, things he gathered, he kept. And I decided to go in the shed and look for something for us to do. Well, in the shed, I found, to my amazement, some bottles of white liquid shoe polish. Now, if you're young, you might not know shoe polish used to be liquid, okay? And you used to use this liquid polish to polish your shoes. And I found some bottles of red ink. And then the thinker that I am, I found a pan, and I poured that red ink and that white shoe polish in a pan and mixed it up together and made pink paint. And not knowing what to do with that paint, I brought it out. And my friends and I, who all wore at that time white canvas sneakers, this was before Air Jordans. Sneakers used to be tennis shoes, and tennis shoes were made of canvas, and you had to wash them and, paint them with the paint in order to keep them white. So we had already polished our sneakers, our tennis shoes, and we decided to take little brushes and make, on the girls' shoes, pink dots on our white sneakers. And the boys helped us do it, and that lasted about 10 minutes, and then we were bored again. So still with a pot of paint, we decided to make pink dots on our white t-shirts and our shorts so that they would be matching our tennis shoes. And they helped us to make all these little pink circles all over our clothing. But that did not take long, and we were soon bored. So I saw the back of our freshly painted white house, and we decided to write on the back of the house. So first we wrote our names: Sharon, Brenda, Louis, and then we wrote our nicknames: Dee Dee, Junebug, dumbed down, and there still being space left, we decided to write our favorite songs next to our name. Bewildered by James Brown. I lost someone by the wicked picket and fabulous. And we wrote Stand By Me by Benny King. We wrote The Silhouettes. And we were just having a lot of fun writing these songs on the back of the house. But there was still space left. And so after we finished writing all our songs on the back of the house, we thought to write our favorite dances that go with our favorite songs. And so we wrote Slow Drag. And we wrote The Camel Walk. The Continental Walk. We wrote Hully Gully. Mashed potatoes, cha-cha-cha, while we had practically covered the whole back of that freshly painted White House. We were having so much fun writing on that house that none of us heard this 1953 Pontiac drive through the dark. And it came in so quiet. And my dad, a man of few words, looked at the back of his freshly painted house and said, I'll be back. And we put that Pontiac in reverse and backed out the yard. Now I knew what he meant. He meant when he comes back, that house better be white again. So I'm trying to convince my friends that we have to get this writing off the wall, off the house. But now I have to tell you, shoe polish and red ink sticks. It stains. It's tougher than paint. So first we took a couple of little rags and we tried to wipe it off, but we were just smearing the paint. And then we got little buckets and we dipped them in and we had detergent and it just would not come off. Then I found an old mop and we put it in there. We were going to mop the back of this house. It didn't work. But in the process of doing all this, you find your true friends. Because when this paint wouldn't come off, people start saying things like, my mama waited for me to go to the store. I got to go home. My uncle want me to go buy him some cigarettes. I'll see you later. I got to babysit my little sister. And one by one, all my friends who had written on the back of my house had somewhere to go. So I was left with a pink house, knowing that a 53 Pontiac was going to soon return. And sure enough, here came that Pontiac. And he drove into the yard as quietly as he had the first time. And I just stood there saying, I'm dead. He's going to kill me. There is nothing that I can do. But my dad, a man of few words, he got out of the car, he looked at the house, he looked at me, he went right into the house. He never said a word. The next day, he took out the ladder, he took out the white paint, and he painted the back of our house white again. Now the house has always been white. We paint it every summer. We change the trim, but we always paint the house white. It's been like that, and I suppose until the day I die, it'll stay that way.
Must be those railroad men. My father worked for the railroad too, and he was a man of few words. Our next teller is Deborah Winkler. No matter what story she tells, it's a story that touches your heart and it makes you think. And she's going to do so tonight by telling you a story, a West African folktale called Sunstones by Dawn Eng, my favorite teller.
Even though it's written in the program, that this story is Dawn Eng's story. And I'll start right in. The Malawi people had a village in what is now called Western Africa. They were a wise and gentle people. They lived within the rhythms of moon and sun before there was measured or recorded time. When sun was there, they farmed their fields, for they were great farmers. When they were finished, they played, wrote down the beautiful music sung by the birds, hugged one another, and formed marvelous sculptures by piling up different colored stones from the pebble quarry. When Luca was born, the villagers planted a cula tree seed. This was what was done when a baby was born into the village. Luca's parents cared for the seed until Luca could walk, and they taught Luca how to take care of her own tree. This was their custom. But I need to take you aside and have you understand the importance of the cula tree in this community. The cula tree was a major fruit tree for the villagers. It also measured the rite of passage from childhood to adulthood. How could that be? Well, at times when the Malawi people had to decide things about life in the village, all of the adults brought together to talk about what to do. Now, the villagers knew that some children took better care of their cula trees than others, and so their trees grew better. Being an adult meant being responsible, caring about the village and the other people in it. When a child's cula tree reached the height or contour, everyone knew that it had been carefully tended, and that its owner was now ready to join in making decisions for the village. Some children's little trees died because of neglect. These children had to start over with a new seed. Eventually, though, everyone became an adult when their cula tree reached the right height. One son, I need to tell you too that Luca took very good care of her cula tree. She named her Aaliyah. Aaliyah meant light song. During some time when Luca was not playing, she would sit near Aaliyah and watch her stretch and smile when the soft rains fell. Luca hardly ever forgot to water Aaliyah in between rains. She would carefully scrub Aaliyah's bark with leaves to chase away the bugs. Luca loved Aaliyah. Together, Luca and Aaliyah grew strong and beautiful. The child knew she would soon be an adult. But one sun, something terrible happened. A great storm blew up from the ocean and passed over the Malawi village. These were not the gentle rains they knew. This storm raged down upon them. Streaks of light fell from the clouds. Eventually it ended, and everything seemed to be okay. Luca went out to visit Aaliyah. There Aaliyah stood, split down the middle. Luca wrapped her arms around Aaliyah and slipped to the grass. The rains from her eyes ran down the split, but they could not make Aaliyah grow. Then Luca lost belief. It just was not fair. She had taken good care of Aaliyah, now she was dead. So Luca spent her summers sitting the pebble quarry. She did not want to work. She did not want to play. She did not want to hug or even listen to the birds. She would not plant a new seed. She sat on a log, watched all of her friends she used to play with become adults, but she just sat, tossing stones into a pile without thinking about it. Now every sun and for all of sun, she just sat, tossing stones into a pile, feeling sad and angry. Every day a new pile. One sun, Luca noticed that every sun, the piles she threw stones in all seemed to be about the same size. She was not trying to make the piles the same size. Luca counted the stones from several of the piles and found that all of them had about 720 stones in it. The next sun, Luca counted out 720 stones. When she had tossed those into a pile, sure enough, the sun was gone. Luca figured out that she could divide the sun time into parts just by dividing the stone into different sized piles. Just by counting, she could always tell how much sun time had been used up and how much was left. All of this was set in her mind. She ran home to tell her parents. Almost at once, Luca and her parents realized that maybe this dividing of sun time would be useful for baking. Many of the Malari people liked to bake. Luca's father loved to bake bread. When they baked, they could not care for the fields or even write down the bird songs because they had to watch the bread or cakes till they looked and smelled just right. Luca had possibly changed all of this. Now for the experiment. Luca's mother lit the fire in the oven while Luca's father mixed up a special batch of his bread dough and let it rise. He watched until it was high enough while Luca tossed stones into a pile. When it was high enough, Luca's father put the bread into the oven, washed the bread until it looked and smelled just right. Again, Luca tossed stones into another pile. When the bread was finished and they sat down to enjoy it and to count the stones in the piles, they found that the rising time took about 125 stones, the baking time took about 70 stones. So Luca's mother called a special village meeting to tell the others about Luca's wonderful discovery. The villagers voted that Luca was ready now to be an adult, for caring enough about the village to share this useful baking method. The Malari then took turns tossing the stones for baking so that everyone could do everything they wanted to do and needed to do and still bake good bread and cakes whenever they chose to do so. The Malari shared this idea of baking with sunstones with many villages around the area, and so many people found out about the baking stones. Some people decided that everything had to be measured out by the number of stones tossed. Soon the sunstones were ruining their lives. For the Malari, the sunstones were for baking. The cula trees were for showing who was grown up, and they always got their work done. The Malari remained great farmers, musicians, and sculptors, using the sunstones only when they needed them.
Story about time. And now we have time for one more teller. Lorna Zarnota is an accomplished writer and a musician, as you well know. She's recorded 3 tapes. The latest tape is called Crossroads, and it's a story of choice, and it's due out this December. Even though she writes many of her own stories, she's chosen to tell us a Scottish folk tale tonight called Tam Lin. My favorite teller, Lawrence Arnota.
I believe there are things that we cannot see. And many ancient people believed just that. And this story, Tam Lin, is about the unseen and about love. Hold him, Janet, hold your Tam Lin tight. Hold him, Janet, hold him with all your love and might. Hold him, Janet, hold your Tam Lin fast. Hold him, Janet, hold him, set him free at last, set him free at last. The wooded Carter Howe was haunted, not by ghosties, not by ghouls, but by Tam Lin. Tam Lin with the raven hair, Tam Lin with his eyes of grey, Tam Lin who stole the heart away from any maid who wandered there against her father's will. And there was Janet, and her father's will could not hold her. Ah, Janet has kilted her mantle green, a little laboon the knee, and she has braided her golden hair, a little laboon the bree, and she's away to Carter House, fast as she could flee. And Janet sat beside the well, and she plucked the red, red rose and placed it to her breast. And she could not move. And from the mist stepped the elven knight. Who walks my wooded Carter Howe and plucks my roses red? Your wood? 'Tis not your wood, but mine. My father has given it to me. And I, Janet, walk the wooded Carter Howe, and I will pluck the red, red rose as often as it pleases me. And still she could not move. And Tam Lin sat beside her, and he plucked the white rose and placed it beside the red. And now she was free to move, but still she stayed, and there they loved. Ah, Janet has kilted her mantle green, a little laboon the knee, and she has braided her golden hair a little below the bree. And then she's away to her father's house as fast as she could flee. And what had seemed like a day had been but a space in time, and no one was the wiser. But as the days passed, her face flushed, her belly bulged, and everyone knew Janet was with child. But Janet would have no husband in her father's house. Daughter, you will marry a knight of my house, or bring shame upon us all. Oh, father, I will marry no one of this house. For the bairn that grows within me is not of this world, but that of the elven knight, and the shame is my own. Ah, Janet has kilted her mantle green, a little below the knee, and she has braided her golden hair, a little above the bree, and she is away to Carter House, fast as she could flee. And she sat beside the well and plucked the red, red rose, and there came the elven knight. Who walks my wooded Carter Howe and plucks my roses red? 'Tis I, your own sweet Janet. And Tam Lin sat beside her, and he placed the white beside the red, and she placed his hand upon her belly, that he might feel the child that grew within. Ah, Tam Lin, she said, is there nothing for us? Is there nothing we can do? Janet, I had thought to tell you before, but I could not, and now it seems I must. For you see, I am as mortal as you. Years ago, I rode in this woods on the hunt with my grandsire, the Earl of Roxburgh, and I fell from my horse, and the Queen of Fairies caught me up and took me to live in her hill, there to do her will, to guard the well by day. night. If you go to the crossroads, you can set me free. Oh, but how would I know you? She said. First let pass the black, and then let pass the brown. And when the white steed passes by, pull the rider down and hold me, Janet, hold me, no matter what, and I'll be free. And then Tamlin vanished in the mist. And Janet sat there all the day by the well. And as darkness blanketed the earth, she went to the crossroads, and there she waited, patiently. And it was about midnight when there was a jingling and jangling of bridles, and into the crossroads rode the fairy company. First there was a great black steed, and upon its back the tallest and most beautiful woman Janet had ever seen. She rode proud in the saddle, and her skin was as pale moonlight. The queen of fairies, followed by a company of brown, and then a white steed. And Janet knew the rider of that steed by the signs that had been given her. One hand in a gauntlet, the other hand was bare, and around his head a circlet that bound his raven hair. And Janet, without fear and without a moment's thought, leapt from the tall grasses there, wrapped her arms around the rider, and pulled him to the ground and held him tight. Tamlin's away! Tamlin's away! The cry went up, and the queen of fairies wheeled her black horse about, and she fixed Tamlin with an icy gaze. He circled and he slithered, and coiled himself around, and in her arms he withered, and in his place was found a snake. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin tight, hold him, Janet, hold him, with all your love and might. And Janet held her arms around that snake, and she held him tight. And then he vanished. But in his place, she felt fur. She smelled a dense, rank scent, a wild beast. And when she opened her eyes, she found that in her arms she was holding a wild bear. And he raked her arms with his claws, and he gnashed his teeth in the air. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin tight, hold him, Janet, hold him, with all your love and might. And the bear vanished. And she felt a breeze blowing through her hair, and when Janet looked, she saw that in her arms she was holding a swan, and it was beating about her head with its wings and pecking at her face with its beak. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin tight, hold him, Janet, hold him, with all your love and might. And the swan vanished, and in its place she found that she was holding a bar of iron. That's all that was left. But that burning bar of iron, it became so hot that she had to grab tighter and tighter for fear that she might drop it upon the ground. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin tight, hold him, Janet, hold him, with all your love and might. Oh, and Janet wanted to let that bar of iron fall to the ground. The pain ran up her arms, but instead she ran to the well and she plunged it into the cool waters. The steam rose up, and from the steam stepped a naked Tamlin, reborn into this world, their fingers still entwined. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin tight, hold him, Janet, hold him, with all your love and might. Hold him, Janet, hold him, hold your Tamlin fast. Hold him, Janet, hold him, you've set him free at last, set him free at last. But the queen queen of fairies she wheeled about. She looked down at Janet and said, "Ah, she who has got Tamlin this day has got the bonniest and brightest night that ever I laid eyes upon. And you, Tamlin, had I known this wealth of a girl would have rescued you, I would have removed your heart and replaced it with one of stone." She turned her horse and rode away, the company of Brown behind her. Janet has kilted her mantle green a little above the knee, and she's let down her golden hair a little below the bree, and they are away to her father's house as fast as they can hide, and there they lived, and there they loved, until the day they died.
I hope you all hold tight to the stories that you've heard here tonight. As you know, they're all my favorite tellers. Celebration happens the third Saturday of every November. And we hope to see you back again next year. Thank you so much for coming. Let the stories continue.